Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Wells of Wall Street, a video here on POWR, Power Ledger. Guys, this is one of the great assets that we talk about here on the Wells of Wall Street quite regularly, but just pinpointing really some price movements recently, where our expectations for Power Ledger will be for the remainder of the year and into next year. But before we do all of that chart stuff, let's dive into a couple of points here. So we covered recently the aspect, particularly in Australia, which is where they're mainly based, of course, beginning the first carbon neutral apartment complexes. So those that are new to perhaps energy and crypto, and what I mean by energy and crypto, not necessarily the energy consumption of blockchain, but more so the actual energy sector itself. This is what we're talking about. So we talk about like Energy Web token quite a bit as well, and a few others. But POWR, Power Ledger, are doing some great things, great partnerships alongside the likes of Google and the UN in particular as well. Loads of things going on. But the concept, of course, of this is like in the near future, we will have tokenomics within energy, okay, utilizing blockchain. So when you as a person could then become a prosumer, is what they call them. So instead of obtaining energy and utility through our centralized systems that we have today, you have the ability with the likes of community batteries or your own household battery taking in energy from renewable sources such as obviously sunlight, potential wind, and these kind of things. And in particular in the UK here, we're talking about heat pumps and things like that. There's a multitude of things that can come into play for you to then be able to become a prosumer and sell your excess energy or surplus energy onto the system of blockchain and to other people around the world, because ultimately what you're doing is buying units of energy. Okay, it's not like with the exception of gas actually being obviously a proper supply, those are still done on units, the same as electricity. Okay, so you're kind of borrowing utilities. There's people in the background brokering energy deals for you on your behalf as part of big companies, and transporting your energy to various different institutional companies, like we talk about, like Shell, EDF, all these kind of big companies there, who then produce the equivalent of the opportunity for you to be able to obtain that energy, and thus you pay your bills. So this is kind of like a bit of a role reversal, if you like. There are some centralized aspects, there are also some decentralized aspects, in the sense that you might have the opportunity to really engage in being able to produce energy and sell it yourself, use that money to contribute to other bills or other aspects of your life. And the same will be happening anywhere in a centralized society. The idea behind what they call this down here, the 24/7 carbon-free energy compact, this is built upon multitude of different foundations and companies around the world. Like we mentioned with Google, I mean, there's a magnitude of them really involved in these kind of things. The SE for All, got like Clinton Foundation, of course, big Agenda 30 program with the UN. We talk about quite heavily on some of these articles here about the mechanism of what's trying to be achieved by 2030. Of course, Google operating this since 2007, arguably in terms of their carbon reductions and being net zero. The aspect of however many people utilize Google on a daily basis, of course, utilizes energy, both the search mechanism and, of course, your hardware that you're using, the energy in your house to use for search engines and things like this. They're in their background trying to fixate that aspect that they're trying to be carbon neutral, giving you essentially a carbon neutral search mechanism, and obviously for all the other projects that they do. So going back to this point about the complex here, for example, about utilizing solar rooftop systems, local battery storage, whether that be community driven or within your own household, like we just mentioned, it's really giving an opportunity to be able to share the mechanism of energy, stop wastage, and also be fairer in terms of price. Using blockchain with the likes of AI algorithm and this, that, and the other, we won't be as consumers bowing down to those ridiculous prices that we always see. It would be very much down on proper algorithm of supply and demand, giving a fairer system, in my opinion. But of course, there's lots to be done still in the near future and the long term. But it's nice to see these big companies coming together, and the likes of Power Ledger, bringing a new solution to the table for people. And I think this particular project, along with like the likes of Energy Web, where we've done a lot of sort of case study videos on recently as well, these kind of blockchain technologies and chains in general are going to be absolutely imperative for the way that we move technologically, and also from a tokenomics aspect in terms of how we deliver the supply and demand of energy and become more sustainable moving forward. So for me, it's one of the top projects in this particular sector. Of course, there's big targets for 2030 across a multitude of topics, not just energy, but this is certainly one of the big ones. A lot of money is going to be made in this sector. Don't have wool over your eyes, as it were. There is no doubt in my mind that there are massive green policies and contracts being put in place. But the general consumer, the general person at the end of utilizing this kind of technology, won't have a clue what is going on in the background, how it's working. They just care about how they do it, how do they receive this, and is it easy enough to be able to use without having to know all this stuff in the background. So as an investor, it's obviously important to know, and as a researcher from our side, it's important to know. I could talk about this all day long, to be honest, in regards to how the carbon aspect and the energy sector will move on to blockchain more and more in the future. And we talk about the autonomous vehicles, EV charging, house charging, all of these things where we will eventually develop a whole cycle 24/7, as they say, of moving energy about on blockchain. It's quite incredible, really, to get your head around it. But go and check out our other videos related to Power Ledger and EWT that we focus quite heavily and deeply into those kind of topics. But I just wanted to bring a few sort of top line areas around what is possible with the likes of Power Ledger and what their capabilities are, as well as awesome partnerships going around the world. So do go check out some of these links here, particularly around the UN. Of course, a big focus, as we said, by 2030, part of their Agenda 30 program, energy being a big part of that. So guys, Power Ledger on the charts, let's just take a look at that as well. So obviously we had the previous moves around this area here in November, which we covered. I think it was about 130% increases. We've had a nice correction since then, as has most of the market, to be honest. But what my key points are for this, the previous all-time high sat at $2 or just over $2. I think it was 2.06. So we've got a while to go yet, but it's really promising to see, even that this year alone, seeing highs of nearly $1 already. If we get a bull run going into, I believe, into next year, of course, over the next few months, I think we could smash past that $2 mark for sure. If we're looking at fib retracement lines, I mean, $3.4 is the top line on a macro level. But if we were to base this on recent history of that all-time high as well as the low points, this is arguing around maybe $8. That might be a bit far-fetched in my opinion, but crazier things have happened. And of course, as we know, with the likes of bull runs kicking in, these things are quite possible. And if $2 was one of its previous all-time high, very much near its launch, to be honest, I do take that with a pinch of salt. But I do generally believe we are able and capable of getting to at least that $2 mark in the coming bull run, and possibly towards that $5 mark in terms of an end of bull run price point. So we're going to do a bit more analysis on that for the next video. But let us know in the comments below what you think about the potential price point of POWR, both at the end of this year and the end of the bull run. I'm not expecting big things, to be honest, by the end of 2021. Certainly next year, as the green conversations continue, I think this is going to be one of the top projects that's interlaced, trying to build new technology, trying to build new communities, both in the chart perspective, but also physically in our world. It's got a long way to go, and I think this is a great one to hold for the future. 5 years, 10 years down the line, when everything's integrated, everything's working on these systems, you're going to look back at these prices and laugh at them, in my opinion. Anything related to energy, AI, IoT, what we talk about quite a lot, these are big opportunities for sure. So look at this in terms of a price point. We're very much bouncing around this kind of support area of around 40 cents. So currently, as a recording, hitting that 44 cent mark. We're down 1% on the week, which is quite respectable, to be honest. The correctional period is arguably phasing off. We're hitting previous resistance that we saw here around the 40 cent mark. We're receiving that quite well over the last few weeks, and it looks like we're trying to tail this back up into a positive momentum. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there'll be some bounce backs to these areas again, but the RSIs and the sell-off aspects on the MACD here are looking very positive, in my opinion. Obviously, today has been a little, very tiny spike upwards, not massive, but certainly going in a nice forward direction. The RSI is also showing very good stability at these 40 lines. So for me personally, I am bagging POWR as much as I can around this price point, knowing that there's probably a limitation on risk coming down further. But I'm really excited about the movements forwards. I do think we can get, certainly by the end of the bull run, back to that previous $2 all-time high, and I think we can go beyond that as well. But for me, I'm holding very much for the future as well as short-term gains. Certainly over the next 5 years is going to be very interesting in this space, and especially if the cycles go as they say they do, by the time we're in the year 2024 and 25, if that bull run cycle completes around then, we could be seeing some very serious prices, maybe even potentially over $10. So for me, like I said, it's a short-term opportunity for gaining in the few months coming, but more importantly for me, that future aspect of where the energy sector is going and where I think POWR is going as well. So let us know what you think about that in the comments below. We will update power probably sometime next week as we see any fruition of trying to break out of this 40 cent mark into the 50 cent areas, which I really would be excited to see as time goes by. We did do that a few days ago, but I would very much like to see some support at this 51 cent mark. So we've got maybe a week or so for us to get back up to these areas. Let's try and do that, and we'll come back with another update video once that has occurred. But thanks for watching, guys. We will see you in the next POWR video. Bye bye.